Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, story changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Isolation Inspiration Interview Series. Our guest today is Gayle Macdonald. Gayle has been alcohol-free since March 2018. She's passionate about helping women transform their lives and the lives of their families by changing their relationship with alcohol through self-awareness, self-care, and self-discovery. She helps women break free from their struggles with alcohol to find peace, balance, and freedom. Gayle understands that living with alcohol struggles is a destructive cycle in which so many women get stuck. Yet women and mums are targeted and even encouraged to drink to cope with their lives in today's modern world. Gayle believes this is a dangerous message both to ourselves, our children, and future generations of young women. She wants to change the stigma, shame, and guilt of choosing an alcohol-free life and turn it into something that is celebrated. Gayle's company, Sober Bliss, is a place where you can find love, support, and safety to explore your own journey to sobriety and rediscover your true self. In this interview today, you will learn addiction doesn't hit you one day, it creeps up. How to use journaling to process difficult emotions. Why most of us need to abstain rather than moderate. And to be careful about using alcohol as a coping mechanism during coronavirus. You're going to learn this and so much more in this interview with Gayle Macdonald.
As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Newcastle in the northeast of England, but I live in Spain and I've lived here now for 15 years. So that's probably the first surprising thing, because we came over here with a plan to maybe live for 5 years. And then obviously we've never gone back. I've got 2 boys, one of them was born here, and we live in a small village, and it's just such a nice place to bring up children. You know, I know that if they go out, they're safe, everybody knows each other. If anything happens, I'm definitely, be told about it, so they can't really get away with anything. It has its downsides as well. Everybody knows everybody's business. Often before you know yourself or what you've done, then they know about it already. There's a bit of gossip. There's not that many English people, so we do get talked about quite a lot. But that's, we're used to it now. And we've got a lot of friends here in support. And it is a bit stuck in the past in some ways, so it can be frustrating. But on the other side of things, it's a relaxed way of life as well, which is why we left the UK originally. I was a secondary school teacher teaching languages, and my husband stayed at home to look after my eldest son when he was a baby. And we never really saw each other. I never saw my son that much, and it was just quite stressful. We lived in a bit of a rubbish area in Newcastle as well, and we thought, there's got to be a better way. I wanted a better life for my kids, so we up sticks and came here, which is a bit ironic actually, because wanting a better life ended up for me kind of running away from life and numbing out life, because over the course of my time here in Spain, I became addicted to alcohol, which is the other part of my story. And quite surprising from a personal point of view, because I never ever thought that I would be in that position. Because, I was sensible, I was a good girl at school, study really hard, I didn't go out and party or anything like that. I wasn't a wild child, I didn't go clubbing or anything like that. My drinking started probably, as most people's does, to relax and unwind at the end of the week, to socialize with friends. And obviously here in Spain, socializing is a big thing. You go out for tapas in the evening. We used to go to bars quite a lot in the beginning to practice our Spanish, of course, because with a few beers, conversation flows a lot easier. Well, you think it does in your head, but probably you end up talking a lot of rubbish. So that's how it started. And gradually over time, the drinking in the village crept over to drinking at home, because it's so cheap here, and it's hot, it's sunny, so there's nothing like a cold beer at the end of the evening. But gradually it took over, and I was drinking every day for probably about the past 5 years or so. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine an afternoon without a drink, or the whole weekend without a drink. And I started to use it to cope with my life. And I didn't realize that until actually after I quit. When you look back and you think, gosh, yeah, I was using it for everything. I did have 6 months off by choice, and that was just amazing. Obviously, when I was pregnant, I didn't drink at all, and I just loved how healthy I felt. So when my youngest son was about 3 or 4, I took a break, and it was surprisingly easy, and I had 6 months off alcohol completely. And then, stress has kind of crept in again, and I went back to it. And it was after that point where I got into the habit of daily drinking. So getting back to the point where, we came to Spain to create a better life, and I ended up ruining it really, for my kids and myself, because it just took over. It really did. I would start drinking at about, 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon after the school run. And beer was my thing. And because I was rubbish at wine, I just couldn't drink wine at all. But I'd liked a cold beer. And what I used to do when I came home from the school run was I had a beer. That was the first thing I did. Walked in the door, had a beer. And I don't know if it was kind of making the switch between the morning shift and the afternoon shift, but I needed that time to kind of transition into the next part of the day. But the problem was I didn't just stop at one beer. I could quite easily have, 5 or 6, which doesn't sound a lot, but I'm not very big, and my tolerance wasn't very good. Even after a couple of beers, I would be tipsy and feeling relaxed, and like all was well with the world. But then obviously I would try and chase that feeling throughout the rest of the day, and it doesn't work like that at all. And that was me probably every day. I would start drinking earlier at the weekends because it was the weekend, and you could. And sometimes I would have, as I say, my 3 or 4 beers, and I would be so tired and drunk that I would go to bed and have a little nap, or a siesta, as they call them here in Spain, which are wonderful things, but I did mine for the wrong reasons. And then I would wake up again, have a cup of tea, be grumpy, be in a bad mood, be cross with everybody, probably, hungover. And then I would have some more beer to see me through to the end of the evening. And that's what kind of pains me the most, because I would drink through everything. I had 2 boys at home who were still quite little, And I would drink through, you know, their homework time, their bath time, their story time, their bedtime, and you know, I would rush through the bath time with them, desperate to get them off to bed. The same with the story time. I would skip pages and, you know, say, oh, it's finished now, and then have another drink because I deserved it for getting through the end of the day. And that was life really, for, as I say, for about five years, just drinking through everything. And I just, now looking back, I am coming to terms with it more, but I still feel real guilt about missing everything with my kids growing up. There's so much that I can't remember, and that's, you know, I feel quite ashamed about that. My kids will say something like, oh, do you remember when we did X, Y, and Z? And genuinely, I can't remember. And that hurts a lot because, you know, kids grow up so fast and you need to be there and not miss out on any moment. And I missed out on so many moments with them. And also we used to do things as a family, you know, go to the pool, maybe go and have lunch in the village, but it was always centered around the drinking. You know, we couldn't go to the pool and just have a couple of hours at the pool. We had to go to the bar. And then after a couple of drinks, you know, we had to come home because we wanted more, but we couldn't have more because we wouldn't be able to drive. So we had to come home. So their fun time was cut short. I wouldn't let them take part in many after school activities because we lived quite far out from the village, and anything that happened in the afternoon we would have to drive them there. And I wouldn't let them do that because it meant that I couldn't have a drink. Even school trips where they went on, I would feel resentful because I knew that I had to go down and pick them up in the evening, and that meant that I couldn't have a drink. Or sometimes I would say, okay, I'll have a drink now, and then I'll have a break, and then it'll be all right to drive, which it probably wasn't, which is not a good place to be in either. And it just took over everything. Alcohol was the focus of our lives. My husband was a drinker as well. We used to drink together. We could easily get through, you know, 24 cans a day of beer, which is about, I don't know, say £11. And that's a lot of money to spend. And we wasted that money. We literally poured it down the drain. And we would say to the kids, no, you know, you can't have a new pair of trainers this month, or I can't afford to get you X, Y, and Z. But we would quite happily spend money on beer every day without a second thought. And it got to the point where, although I hated it and I hated what it was doing to me, I was lethargic all the time. I was overweight. I had no energy. I didn't have any interests. But at the same time, the thought of not drinking anymore really terrified me. And I just couldn't imagine a life without alcohol in it at all. And that carried on until just over 2 years ago, when it was the usual Friday night and we had some wine in the house. It was one of those boxes, you know, with a little tap on to make it easier to drink. But the problem with that is it was so convenient and you can't really tell how much you drink because you keep topping the glass up. And as I said, I was rubbish with wine. I just couldn't drink wine at all, but that's all we had. So that's what I drank. And what started off as a fun Friday afternoon ended as it, you know, it usually did in arguments. And I would get annoyed with the kids and I would just want them away from me so I could be in my own little bubble. I turned into a horrible person when I had wine, and my husband and I got into a massive argument, as we often did. And I can't really remember what was said or what happened, but I just remember thinking, right, that's it, I can't be here anymore. So I got my laptop, my passport, don't know why, money, and I got in the car. Bearing in mind that I was drunk, really drunk. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to go. I had no idea where I was going to go. And then I realized that I had my son with me because he'd followed me out. He didn't want me to go. And he started crying in the car because he didn't have anything with me. And he said, oh, I haven't got my pajamas or my teddy, where we're going to go. And he was crying. And thankfully, his crying kind of brought me back to my senses. And I just thought, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I came back in. Everyone was cross with me. I put my kids to bed, and then I drank some more wine because I was just so ashamed of what I'd done and terrified at the thought of what could have happened. You know, I was so drunk that I couldn't even see to put the key in the ignition. So if I'd driven anywhere, it just would have ended in disaster. And that really shook me up. But not enough to stop drinking then and there, such as, you know, what happens when you are addicted to alcohol. You use it to numb out all of these feelings. And my feelings of shame and regret were just so painful. I couldn't deal with them. So I had to carry on drinking to try and numb them out. But after a few months, my husband said, you know, this can't carry on. You need to do something about it. And I said, yeah, we do. But the thought of quitting was just too scary. So he said, why not, you know, let's just not buy any alcohol today and see what happens. And that I could cope with. It was a small thing and it was just one day. And I thought, okay, yeah, we'll have a break and we'll see how we get on. And we didn't buy any alcohol that day. There were 2 beers left in the fridge, which I drank because they were screaming at me, you know, you're not going to have any more after this, so you might as well drink me. So I did. And then the next day there was no alcohol in the house, and we didn't buy any more. And that was 2 years ago, and we've never bought any alcohol since. I've never had a drop since. And I've never looked back on that decision. I feel now exactly how I wanted to feel, but I couldn't quite imagine it. So that little, you know, prompt from my husband not to buy any alcohol that day has changed my life completely over these past 2 years. So that's where I'm at now.
I find it interesting listening to the story, and bearing in mind that you're from Newcastle, which is quite a drinking and partying city. I live in Glasgow. There's a very similar sort of thing that actually you weren't into it at all in that environment, but it was moving away from that environment that actually began the process, which was something that I was surprised at coming into this interview. I thought it'd be more the other way around, that the move to Spain would actually be part of the getting away process, but it was almost the start of things. So that stood out to me, something interesting. Do you have any insight as to why for so long it was just never a thought for yourself?
You mean when I was younger, living in Newcastle?
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I was a good girl. You know, studying was important to me. I was brought up quite strict, and I was a member of the Sea Cadets. So my time was spent, you know, marching around in uniform and being told what to do, and quite happily, you know, be told what to do. There was a lot of discipline in that kind of lifestyle. And it also got me away from the party scene, I suppose. But I'm not really like that as a person anyway, so I didn't feel that I was missing out on anything. I would have much preferred to go canoeing on the River Tyne at the weekend, as opposed to, you know, going down the big market and getting wasted. And I think as well, there was that fear that kind of held me back, because I like to be in control. I like to know that I can get home safely. Home is a big thing for me, and it's important to me to be able to, be safe at home. And the thought of going out on a Friday and having to get the last bus home or missing the bus, and that was just not something that interested me at all. And being part of the Sea Cadets was something that I really enjoyed. I like the outdoors, I like hiking. We did a lot of sailing, canoeing competitions, and that's what I enjoyed more, getting out and about and in the fresh air and being active and exercise. So when I was younger, there wasn't really anything that I would rather do as opposed to, be out and about and having fun in a safe, controlled way. Fun to me wasn't getting wasted at all. And I suppose the switch came was when I got my own house and when we moved here more so. I've kind of thought, well, I'm a grown up. Grown-ups have wine in their house. Grown-ups drink. Look at me, here I am. I'm a homeowner. I've, got a job, and let's have the lifestyle to go with it, which obviously involved drinking wine and beer and having barbecues with friends and entertaining and all of that. So that's where the alcohol became part of my life, really.
I think alcohol addiction is, I'll use the word interesting. It's maybe not the best adjective, but I can't think of a better word at the moment. In terms of alcohol as an accepted behavior, drinking alcohol as an accepted behavior. If you look at it compared to other addictions, for example, most other addictions, if you're looking at substances, are illegal, whereas alcohol is not only illegal, but certainly here in the UK, particularly in my home country of Scotland, there is a drinking culture where drinking and being drunk is actually celebrated. It's like a talking point. It's a badge of honor times. So I think alcohol addiction is maybe the most sort of insidious of the addictions, because it's so acceptable. You think, well, I'm just doing something that everybody does. And at the moment in isolation periods, my wife, she's a connoisseur of wine and gin, but she's got to the point where she's like, David, at the moment, because of everything that's going on, I could just like sit down on a Tuesday night and drink a bottle of wine, because just everything is distorted at the moment. So she's actually been buying like non-alcoholic wine, because she's like, I like the glass of wine in terms of like the ritual of I finished work and pour in a glass of wine, but I can't be doing that every single day of the week, or I'll find myself in sort of a troublesome situation. So what are your thoughts on alcohol addiction as opposed to any other kind of form of addiction?
I agree with what you say, and the fact that it is so celebrated and encouraged, even, I would say. If you don't drink, then people think there's something wrong with you, to start with. And it's perfectly normal to drink, which, is my fall down. I thought it was because I was a grown-up, then I had to drink. And you don't think of alcohol as an addictive substance. You think it's just, a social lubricant, a way to relax, to have fun. And it is so normalized, which is why I think it's so easy to get hooked, to get addicted to alcohol, because you don't have that fear like you would, for example, with other substances. Even smoking these days, it's frowned upon. But whereas alcohol isn't, and because you haven't got that thought process behind it like you would with other substances, then people aren't afraid to try it, to start it. It's encouraged. Everybody drinks. And if you don't, then you think there's something wrong with you, or people think there's something wrong with you. And that's why it's, it's just so easy to get into the habit of drinking, maybe more than you would like to, because everybody else does it. And so, why shouldn't I do it? Everybody else is. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's promoted, it's advertised, and it's normal to drink alcohol or to chuck a bottle of wine in your shopping trolley as it is to, buy a packet of crisps or whatever. And I think that's the problem with it.
What do you think are some of the warning signs of when drinking alcohol turns from a lifestyle into an addiction?
Yeah. The main problem is that it creeps up on you slowly. You don't go from having a glass of wine on a Friday night to all of a sudden drinking every day. You slowly build up tolerance. You slowly build up, your brain recognizes it as a reward. It recognizes it as a way to relax and cope with stress. So that's the problem, definitely, because it does creep up gradually. So the warning signs are not there straight away. It's only until you are at that point where you're probably drinking daily, then you think, this is not right. For me personally, I knew something was wrong when the thought of not being able to drink, maybe, I don't know, we misjudged the Spanish holidays and the shops were shut. We didn't have any alcohol. And that kind of panic and fear, like, oh my God, we haven't got any alcohol in the house. What am I going to do? If you feel that way, then that is a warning sign, definitely, because you shouldn't need alcohol in the house in order to get through your day. And if you worry or panic that you haven't got any, then that is a sign that you're perhaps relying on it more than you thought you were. Another thing is the feelings about your drinking. If, hangovers are one thing. I know you said before that it's kind of a badge of honor. People joke about their hangovers, and if you go out and you don't have a hangover, then maybe you're called a lightweight, or perhaps you didn't drink enough to get that, hangover. So you can talk a bit about it with your mates. For me, hangovers were kind of a personal hell, because all of the thoughts of what went on the day before just used to plague me for hours and hours. So apart from hangovers, if you are not happy with the way that you're drinking, if you feel regret, or if you feel ashamed, or if you feel annoyed with yourself that you drank more than you said you wanted to, then that's another sign that perhaps you need to take a break, or that things need to change. Often what people do is they get to the point where they think, okay, I'm not very happy with the way my drinking is going. Maybe I'll try and moderate. And then starts, the constant noise in your head, the rules that you set yourself. And then you find that you're always arguing with yourself. You might say, okay, I'm not going to drink from Monday to Friday. And then it gets to Wednesday and it's like, okay, it's the middle of the week. I've had a tough few days. Maybe I could have one drink. That might be all right. Or the voice in your head says, come on, it's Thursday. You're going to have a drink tomorrow anyway, so you might as well have one today. And then you start thinking about alcohol more than you probably previously did. And when it starts to take over your thoughts and to take up space in your head and become the focus of, you know, your day, then that is another sign that maybe you're drinking a bit too much.
Mhm. It's interesting what you're saying about our attempts to moderate things. I was listening to a podcast, must have been a couple of years ago now, and they were talking about moderating in general. I think the example they were talking about was actually moderating food, so not eating too much sugar and not stuffing yourself with junk food. And they're saying most people think of moderation as a spectrum in terms of you go from less to more, but actually it's more like a binary distinction. You're either a moderator or an abstainer. You're either someone who can do things in moderation, or you either have to be on or off. You either binge in whatever kind of area we're talking about, or you don't have it at all. And most of us think we're moderators, that we can have things up to a certain level, but actually psychologically more of us are abstainers. We're either on or off. So if you want to cut out sugar, you can't just eat less sweets, you have to stop eating sweets. If you want to cut down on alcohol, you can't just drink less, you have to stop drinking alcohol. And this is something that I've found for myself, actually, that I am an abstainer. I can't moderate stuff. So if there's something that I don't want to be doing in my life, like, I just have to cut it out. And actually for me as well, alcohol has proven a similar thing, because I can't moderate alcohol, and I either need to be on or I'm off. And for 5 years now, I'm not teetotal in terms of I've never had a drop of alcohol in the last 5 years, but it's once or twice a year for very special occasions, because I can't do any more than that, because I can't moderate. I have to be an abstainer. So I think it's interesting that I think a lot of people, when they feel themselves in this slippery slope, they think they can just do less of it. But what the answer probably is they need to stop doing it and feel what that's like for an extended period of time.
Definitely, yeah. I'm the same. I'm an all or nothing kind of person. And moderating, especially if you're trying to moderate an addictive substance, because alcohol is addictive, it's just impossible, really, because the more you drink, then because of what alcohol does in your brain, the more you need. So actually, it is far easier just to stop completely. And even though it's a scary thought, it is far better than trying to moderate, because it's exhausting always having to think about it and put rules on your behavior and restrictions. And like I said before, it ends up just taking over far more than just stopping is. I like to say, refer to the quote from Michael Jordan when he says, once I made the decision, then I didn't think about it anymore. And that's exactly what happened to me with my alcohol journey. I made the decision that I wasn't going to drink, however long that was going to be for. I didn't set myself a goal, or it wasn't going to be forever, because that's just too scary to comprehend. But simply saying, I'm not going to drink. And then honestly, I didn't think about it anymore. And it's really surprising and so liberating when all of this baggage and noise in your head just disappears. Because that was the thing that used to get me down the most, the constant chatter and the negative self-talk. I would always say, you're rubbish, you can't moderate, there's something wrong with you, you can't just have one glass of wine, you have to have, the whole bottle, and you're a rubbish mum, alcohol is more important than your kids. But when I made the decision that I wasn't going to drink, everything just disappeared, and I felt a million times lighter. And I think it's difficult to comprehend when you're still stuck in that cycle of rules and restrictions and moderations. but it is far easier. The first morning that I woke up and I hadn't had a drink the day before was just a complete revelation. First of all, because I didn't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning like I always did, you know, full of regret and shame. My heart would be hammering. I would need to drink water. I would need to go to the loo. My sleep was awful, and I would wake up the next day just feeling rubbish, basically. Not necessarily hungover every day, but just a bit crap. But that first day I woke up and I'd slept through the night. I was like, oh my God, I've just slept through the night. How cool is that? And then I woke up and I felt normal, but that normal was just so far removed from the crappiness that I always used to feel. I thought, my God, this is amazing. I want to feel like this every single day. And that's what kept me going in the beginning, waking up and feeling good.
You mentioned there that you would wake up with these feelings of regret and shame, and these were words that I heard you using a lot in your account as you were talking about this experience. I'm guessing that in the last 2 years, this is something that you've had to start processing for yourself. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've been starting to come to terms with these sort of difficult feelings?
Yeah. When I quit drinking, the first few months were really good and calm, and I was happy in my decision and everything was going well. And then slowly the feelings, like I've said, of regret and shame would kind of bubble up to the surface. And it would take me by surprise often. I remember I was sitting with my family, we were having a pizza night, we were watching a movie, and everyone was together, and I've got a teenager, so it's quite rare he's in the same room as us. And I was just looking around and I thought, oh, you know, this is just so lovely. Everybody's together, nobody's fighting. And then I just started crying, had to leave the room because I remembered other Friday nights when everybody was in a separate room. I was grumpy, I was shouty, or I would be the opposite and I would be, come on everybody, let's party, let's blast the music. And you know, it might be 11 o'clock at night and I had a small child and all he wanted to do was go to bed. But here was I, you know, crazy mum wanting to party. And that, God, I'm getting a feeling in my stomach now of that's just not who I am. And that's the biggest regret, I suppose, that alcohol turned me into something that I'm not. I'm not that kind of person who parties until dawn. And it was difficult to cope with those intense feelings of pain sometimes. So I've discovered meditation, which really helped to calm my mind and help me to accept what's gone on. You know, I can't change the past, but I can look to the future. And it also helped me to live in the moment, which might sound a bit woo and everything, but I've spent a lot of time looking back and looking to the future, and often I would miss what was actually right in front of me. So it helped me to enjoy these kind of family moments and just be grateful that we're in the moment and enjoying each other's company. And also, I have a blog, I have a website, and I write blogs on there. And I wrote a blog specifically about coming to terms with my mum guilt, my past drinking days. And I kind of let it all out. I journal from time to time. It's not something that I do regularly, but I do find that writing on my blog particularly just helps me to get it out of my head and on paper or on the computer. And that's the big thing, to get the feelings and the emotions out and onto somewhere else. You know, even if I might write something in my journal and I don't look at it again. Just getting it out there is a way that's really helped me to come to terms with these, wasted years that I regret a lot.
So bring us up to the current day, Gayle. What are you doing and what are you helping people with now?
Yeah. So I started a blog about 6 months after I quit drinking. And it was just kind of to give people hints and tips to talk about my journey, what I went through. Because I felt so amazing, I didn't want to keep it to myself. I thought, everybody has to hear this. I feel like I've been let into the best secret in the world. And I wanted everybody to experience this feeling of liberation. So it started off slowly as a blog and a website. And now it's grown from just me rambling on and sharing bits and bobs to I offer courses and one-to-one support. I'm about to finish an addiction therapy diploma, which is really exciting. So learning about addiction in general has helped me even more. So now I feel better qualified. Obviously my own experience is a huge qualification, but I feel more qualified, in terms of my own professional development to help people. So I have a Facebook group where people can come in and just get support and help and advice. But more formally, I offer a group coaching program and one-to-one coaching program to help people through the process of quitting drinking. And we start generally, slowly, gently. We start with a couple of weeks preparation, because that was the big thing for me. It was the leading up to the moment that I struggled with. And if I'd had help preparing myself, then I'm pretty certain that I would have come to the decision and quit a lot sooner than I did. But trying to prepare on my own, it just didn't work for me. I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't know what being alcohol free looked like, so I had no idea how to prepare for it. So that's a big thing that I help people with. And then we have 2 months abstinence together, loads of support, loads of tools, advice. We check in daily and weekly as well. And then we have 2 weeks reflection. So how did it go? How did you find it? And more importantly, helping people to decide where they want to go from there. So it's not just kind of let's quit together and then you're left on your own. It's much more supportive and gentle, and helping other people through this journey, these stages, is continuing to help me every single day, because it's so easy to look back and think sometimes, oh, maybe one would be okay. Actually, it's never going to be okay. But I think we need to remind ourselves of where we've been and how far we've come. And that comes from me helping other people to get to where I am now.
It's interesting what you're saying about people can't imagine what alcohol-free looks like, so they can't actually see the vision of where they want to go. And I feel this would be a common experience in different domains, where there's something that you want to be, but you don't actually even know what that sort of model of success looks like. How can people start to see that vision even though they haven't experienced it and haven't been there themselves?
Yeah. It's quite exciting in some ways, because what I do in my program, and I encourage people to do it for other areas of their life, is to actually take the time and sit down and imagine their vision for the future. You probably know that visualization is hugely successful. You know, famous people do it, actors do it, athletes do it, musicians do it. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to do it before he did his, competitions. And it's so powerful to be able to visualize your future self and go into as much detail as possible and focus on absolutely everything, because the brain doesn't know the difference between real life and what you're imagining in your head, which is why it's so powerful. So taking the time to actually feel what it is that you want out of this alcohol-free life is such a powerful motivator. It's an inspiration. It gives you something to work towards, but more importantly, it taps into the feelings that you want to have in your new alcohol-free life. And I only discovered this about a year ago. So I had no idea how to visualize, at the time. I just thought, well, alcohol-free life looks like exactly what it does, but there's no drinking involved. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to work. What am I going to do? So having this future vision of yourself and what your life will look like is such a powerful thing to do. And I encourage people to go crazy. There's nothing that you can't achieve if you put your mind to it. So if your dream is to go on the best holiday ever, then experience that holiday in your mind, if that's what helps you connect to your vision, if that's what helps you to connect your feelings and your emotions with your goal, and do it regularly. You can't visualize once on a random Tuesday and then expect it to work. It's something you have to do regularly. And the more you visualize what you want to happen, what you want your life to look like, then the more it gets kind of absorbed into your subconscious, and the more it helps you to work towards what it is that you want to do. So we do that a lot, and it's so much fun and it's so exciting.
I'd like to expand our vision from what
Yeah.
we've been talking about so far, Gayle, and we've managed to avoid the elephant in the room for a while, the big C words that everyone's thinking about just now. I would like to move this discussion on to talking about a couple of things in regard to coronavirus and the situation we find ourselves in. So you are another country that I have now spoken to. I haven't spoken to anyone in Spain before now. So can you share first what's going on in Spain and how has coronavirus been affecting you?
Yeah. Well, we kind of started our lockdown, if you like, about a week before the UK, because it emerged that there were a lot of cases in Madrid. So Madrid was the first place that was really severely affected, and it's obviously a massive city. So measures were put in place in Madrid. I think they closed the schools pretty early on, but that's all they did. They closed the schools, and then everybody thought, oh, this is good, let's go on holiday to the coast. So a lot of people from Madrid went down to, I'm in Andalusia, they went to Valencia, Andalusia as well. And then people started panicking and they were like, okay, we need to do something as a country, as a whole. And shortly after that, we got word that the schools would close. I live in a tiny village, and luckily there's no cases at all where we are here. And I think that's thanks to the strict measures that were put in place quite early on. So very quickly, the schools closed, all the public buildings closed, you know, the library, the gym. We have like an adult school here that was closed. Even the town hall, which is our main government building, that was closed to the public very early on, and people were told you have to stay at home, which we did. I work from home anyway, so for me personally, it's not been that much of a change. The only thing is that I've got 2 kids running around and disrupting my day, but they tend to sleep late, so my mornings are still quite free. But in general, there has been moments of fear and panic. We had the same problems as the UK with people panic buying and emptying the shelves. And alcohol and toilet rolls were the 2 things that people stocked up on. But now it's settling down. We've talking at the beginning of our conversation that people are respecting the rules and they're being very sensible in terms of the social distancing and not going out. Obviously, there are cases where people are being told off from the police, were arrested even because they're not following the rules, but that's happening everywhere, not just in Spain. But we were, you know, subject to quite strict measures in the beginning, and the police were out a lot. They would stop everybody, ask them where they were going, what they were doing. You know, I was told that I had to do my shopping and then go straight home. The local mayor came up with masks for everybody in the house, except my youngest son, who's 10, and he was told that he's not allowed out the house at all. So that's him confined to the indoors for the next however long. Similar to the UK, I think over here in Spain, one person can go out to do shopping or to go to the bank or the chemist. We're not allowed to go to the doctors. We have to phone the doctors. So any unnecessary movement is not allowed, and it's quite, you know, well enforced. Only key workers can work now. Nobody else is allowed to. So yeah, there's a feeling now, I think, of kind of acceptance, and this is how things are, and that's it. We're just going to have to put up with it, and things are a lot calmer than they used to be. There's a lot of support. All of the local women got together, well, not together, but they decided together that they would make masks for the village. So we had our masks dropped off, made here in the village, which was nice. We have a local convenience store here, which is a very typical Spanish tiny shop. If there's 2 people in, then it's full. And he closed his doors very early on and decided that he was going to do home deliveries. And I've used his service 3 times now, and it's really good. You just call and tell them your order, and then the next day he brings it up, which is really convenient. The supermarkets are really well stocked, but because only one person can go shopping, I'm the main Spanish speaker apart from my kids in the house. My husband does speak Spanish, but he's not as confident as I am. I'm the one who has to go and do the shopping. And because I haven't got my car at the moment, it's a bit of a pain to go down and get, 5 kilos of potatoes and things. So I do pop out for bread and basic things, but I've phoned my local shop for everything else, and that's helped a lot.
Do you have any insights that can help people get through this current situation and get through to the other side?
Yeah, I was talking to Claire Pooley yesterday, and she's the author of The Sober Diaries, which is a book that helped me through my first few months. And we were having the conversation, and in some ways, it's similar to my sober journey, and just taking it one day at a time, not trying to look too far into the future. In some ways, I don't like that phrase, one day at a time, because it kind of gives the impression that, oh my God, I'm going to have to be counting days for the rest of my life. My focus is just going to be on what day I'm on, what number I'm up to. In reality, that it doesn't happen like that. You do stop counting the days. But in terms of the situation that we're in now, I do think it's helpful just to focus on today, what you can do today. Be thankful today that you are well, that your family is well, that you're safe at home. And then just try not to think about what it might be like, or try not to think about how long we might be in lockdown for, because that could become overwhelming, because you start worrying, gosh, if I'm going to be here for 3 months, what am I going to do, and how am I going to get my exercise and all the rest of it. It can be too much to think about all at once. So certainly just focusing on where you are right now, accepting that you can't change what's gone on, you can't predict what might happen, but that's okay. If you're safe, if you're healthy, if you are at home, then that's a good thing, that's a positive. So just focus on where you are now and try not to worry too much about what might happen, because it's impossible to know.
I think pertinent to our discussion today, you were talking about how people are stockpiling toilet roll and alcohol. They are deemed the two essential things to stockpile. And it's been similar for us here in the UK, and there's just been memes all over the place about, oh, this isolation period, I'm going to come out with the biggest hangover ever, and drinking is going to get me through this situation. And I think these are concerning messages that I think people might start to take on, that alcohol equals my coping mechanism for isolation. Do you have any insight, given your experience and your work, as to how we can nip that in the bud and stop it being an unhealthy relationship and coping mechanism during this time?
Yeah, definitely. And about 2 weeks ago, I got a bit of a bee in my bonnet, because I was watching BBC Breakfast, and it was the day before Mother's Day. And someone was on saying, oh, I'm doing a self-isolation box for my mum, and it's got to have wine in it, and my mum's got to be topped up with her wine. And I was like, no, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do, for many reasons. The first thing is that alcohol is really bad for your immune system. And if there's ever a time where we need to be strong and healthy, it's right now. So if you drink, then that obviously has impacts on your sleep, which in turn affects your mental and your physical well-being. And if you sleep poorly, then that also affects your immune system. So from a health point of view, alcohol is not a good idea at all. And also, as you said, people turning to alcohol to cope, that's another worry for me. I'm really worried about that. Based on my own experience, I used alcohol to cope with everything. And actually drinking is a way of coping that makes you less able to cope, because it numbs everything. It numbs your senses, it numbs your emotions, it lowers your inhibitions. And we need to be sensible at the moment, and you need your faculties about you. You need a clear head. So if you're drinking, then you can't think straight. You are not clear-headed, you are not focused, and we need to be focused and aware with clarity at the moment. And if you use alcohol to cope, then there's a danger that you come to rely on it as a coping mechanism in the future, so not just now. And that's what I found. You know, bad news, let's have a drink. Oh my God, my son's having a tantrum, let's have a drink. This has happened, let's have a drink. And I coped with everything with using alcohol. And if you do that regularly, your brain learns that if you have a drink, then it gets rid of these feelings of stress or anxiety or fear in the moment, and it's a quick fix, and your brain thinks, yes, this is a good idea, it works, let's do that again, let's do that more often. But actually, when you drink to numb everything out, it's a depressant, so it depresses everything. And then when the alcohol wears off, everything that's been depressed just pops back up again, even worse, because you haven't dealt with the real issue. And on top of that, you start to get cravings because all of these feelings are happening. You know that in the past you've coped with them with alcohol. So your brain and your body then starts to crave alcohol to cope with the feelings. And you start to get into a cycle, a never-ending, circle really of drinking to cope and then having cravings and then drinking to get rid of the cravings. And so it goes on and on. So the best thing to do is to be sensible. And also, this time we are by ourselves a lot more. We do have a lot more space and time. And it's a great opportunity to experiment and investigate other ways that you can cope with what's going on. Instead of reaching for a drink, any sign of stress or worry or anxiety, why not take this opportunity and explore what else might work? And because we can't go to bars and to restaurants, there's no social pressure because there's no people. That is a big reason why often people find it hard to stop drinking, because of other people. But now there's no other people. So if you want to, you can take your time and investigate and experiment and explore and see what else is available to you. I have a lot of people in my lovely group, and we were talking about this the other day, and somebody said she'd got her colouring book out, or somebody else had got the old keyboard from the attic and started practicing that again. My own children have started cooking and baking. So there's lots of things that you can do to relieve the boredom, to relieve the stress. Colouring in is great for mindfulness and relaxation and meditation as well. And if you're drinking, then you don't think of these things to try. And this opportunity is, I say opportunity, I always try and put the positive on everything. So you might not think that lockdown is an opportunity, but actually it is. It's a great way to have a look and to see what else is out there and what else you can do. And you might be surprised, you might discover that you love yoga or jogging on the spot or colouring in or, whatever it is. But I would encourage people to just experiment and resist, if possible, making alcohol your go-to coping mechanism.
I'm so glad that you use the word opportunity. It's been fascinating doing these interviews and listening to the language that people are using at the moment, the perspective that people have at the moment. And I think 80 to 90% of my guests in this series have used the word opportunity when talking about this crisis. And this was me. I actually have a pre-prepared question coming into this I wanted to ask about opportunity. but nearly every guest has used the word opportunity before I've even asked the question, which has been really interesting.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple of opportunities so far, Gayle. Are there any other opportunities that you can see in the current situation?
Well, I think it's a chance to slow down, isn't it? And step back, because we are so busy and self-absorbed and rushing from here to there. There's so much to do all the time and places to go. And I think we forget to look after ourselves properly, which is another part of the program that I do as well. And it's helping people to get back in touch with their own self-care. And I don't mean that in a kind of fluffy way, because it is vitally important that we look after ourselves properly. And often people turn to drink because they're not looking after themselves properly. You know, it's much easier to crack open a can of beer as opposed to stopping and focusing on what's really going on, how you're actually feeling, and what you can do about it. That was true in my case. You know, I would kind of soldier on through the whole day, not stopping or taking 5 minutes to check in with myself. And it all got too much, and I would just drink more at the end of the day to cope with what I hadn't been coping with during the day. So the fact that we are at home, you know, there's no school run, there's no commute, there's no, you know, school activities or clubs or places to be. And while in the beginning, people might be struggling with that and thinking, oh my God, I'm at home all day, what on earth am I going to do? It is a great opportunity to look after yourself and to slow down and to really figure out what it is that you need, maybe what's missing in terms of your self-care, and to have a look at where you can go in the future. You know, what habits or what changes can you make now while you've got the time and the space that will help you as we come out of this, that you can use, you know, further down the line in your life.
I'd like to bring everything that we've been talking about today to a close. During our interview today, I've been the one asking the questions, but I'd actually like to give the last question to you.
Ooh.
Is there a question that you would like to ask our audience, or you think the audience should be asking themselves?
Yeah, definitely. My question is, with regard to your drinking, how is it making you feel? And I think that is the most important question to ask yourself if you are perhaps a bit worried about your drinking, or if your drinking behavior is coming to the forefront of your mind. You know, a lot of people kind of Google, am I an alcoholic? Or they ask their friends, how much do you drink? And, you know, do you get bad hangovers? But that's not the important question. The important question is, how is your drinking making you feel? And then depending on the answer to that, ask yourself, would I feel better if I took a break from alcohol? Those are the two most important questions I think that people need to ask themselves.
I think that's probably a general question as well. If you're examining any behavior or habit, ask, how is this making me feel, and would I feel differently if I wasn't doing this behavior, I didn't have this habit? So yeah, I think that is a very a question that a lot of people can get use out of. Absolutely.
Yeah. I wish I'd asked myself that a bit earlier.
Yeah. So Gayle, for our audience who've been listening today and they've resonated with your story, your message, the work that you do, and they want to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you do, where would you be directing people to go?
You can go to my website, which is www.soberbliss.com. And I'm also on, most of the social media channels as well with the same name, Sober Bliss. So if you search Sober Bliss, then you're bound to find me everywhere. And I have a free download which people will probably find very useful at the moment, which is how to get past wine o'clock. So the first thing I always encourage people to do is to maybe have a go at getting through their first wine o'clock. So, and if you can get through that, then you can get through another wine o'clock to come. So this guide will help you, give you lots of tips and advice on what to do instead, which is what we've been talking about today, different ways to cope, to have fun, to relax. Because if all you do is drink, then it can be difficult to know what you can do instead. So if you go to soberbliss.com and get the Beating Wine O'Clock guide, then I'm sure that will help you a lot on your journey, whatever that might look like for you.
Gayle, I'd like to thank you for joining us today on the podcast. I feel you've been very vulnerable. It's not an easy subject to talk about, and especially not when it's a personal experience. And I feel you've been very candid and very honest with what was going on for you and the feelings that were coming up, and talking about some things that maybe don't put you in the best possible light, but you were willing to discuss them and have an open dialogue about them anyway. So I'd just like to acknowledge that and mark that here today on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's kind of therapeutic as well, isn't it? Talking about all these things. So thank you for the opportunity. Another opportunity.
To continue to help you through this isolation period, I've decided to open up my Author Your Life Academy for free for the next 3 months. Author Your Life is my online educational community where you can access training sessions, workshops, and question and answers, and connect with other people around the world who are going through this situation and trying to make the best of things. The Academy normally costs $27 a month to subscribe, but for the next 3 months, I'm going to open that up for free. Essentially, you're getting a 3-month free trial of the platform. To access the Author Your Life Academy, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when prompted, enter the code CORONA in block capitals. Yes, what else would the code be? CORONA in block capitals, and that will take your $27 subscription down to zero for the next 3 months. The Academy is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my content during this difficult time. It's where I'm trying to bring people together to help and support each other as we go through this period of isolation, of fear, of uncertainty. I hope the Academy is something that will be able to help you too during this situation. So if you want to come in and join us, as I said, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when you sign up, enter the code CORONA, and that will give you 3 months for free. It's my gift to you to try and help and support during this time as best I can. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be, because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.